Before you let another thought carry you away, listen for just a little while. There is a heart somewhere in this vast world that has been trying to silence its own feelings for longer than it cares to admit. Tonight, that silence finally broke. Not with loud words or dramatic gestures, but with quiet tears that no one else witnessed. Those tears carried a single question into the stillness. What if the person I have been trying to forget is the very one my soul keeps remembering? Strange things happen when the heart grows tired of pretending. It stops arguing. It stops searching for perfect explanations. It simply begins telling the truth. That is where your soulmate stands now, not at the end of a journey, but at the edge of an awakening they never expected. They believed time would erase what they felt. Instead, every passing season only uncovered another layer they had never noticed before. Have you ever paused for no reason at all, only to feel as though someone was thinking about you? Not because your phone rang. Not because you received a message. Just an unexplainable stillness that settled over your spirit for a brief moment. Most people dismiss those moments and continue with their day. But every so often, life whispers through ordinary seconds, inviting us to notice what cannot be measured with our eyes alone. That is exactly what has been unfolding. Quietly. Patiently. Almost invisibly. Your soulmate has been replaying memories they once called insignificant. A passing conversation. A shared laugh that lasted only a few seconds. A moment of silence that somehow said more than words ever could. At the time, none of it seemed extraordinary. Yet now those same moments return with remarkable clarity, as though every memory has been gently illuminated by a light that was always there, waiting for the right moment to shine. It surprised them. Not because the memories changed, but because they did. Growth has a curious way of revealing what was hidden in plain sight. The same path looks different after wisdom arrives. The same words carry deeper meaning after understanding begins to bloom. And somewhere between ordinary mornings and restless nights, they realized they had spent far too much energy trying to outrun something that was never chasing them. It was patiently waiting for them to stop running. That realization brought emotion they could no longer conceal. Not regret alone. Not longing alone. Something much quieter. Gratitude mixed with vulnerability. For the first time, they stopped asking why certain feelings refused to disappear. Instead, they began asking a different question. What if these feelings remained because they were never meant to be ignored? Questions like that have a way of changing everything. Once they appear, they refuse to leave. They follow you through crowded afternoons and peaceful evenings alike. They sit beside you during moments of celebration and linger during moments of solitude. Eventually, they become impossible to dismiss. Your soulmate discovered that truth one gentle realization at a time, until even the smallest details began fitting together like pieces of a picture they had never fully seen. They noticed how often your name drifted into their thoughts without invitation. They noticed how certain songs suddenly carried unfamiliar emotion. They noticed how hope returned on days when they believed it had quietly disappeared. None of these moments demanded attention on their own. Yet together, they formed something impossible to overlook. A pattern. And patterns have a remarkable way of revealing what random moments cannot. Perhaps that is why tonight feels different. Not because destiny suddenly appeared out of nowhere. But because awareness finally caught up with what the heart had known all along. There is another part of this story that few people ever speak about. Sometimes the deepest tears are not born from sadness. Sometimes they arrive when someone finally forgives themselves for resisting what brought them peace. Your soulmate has been standing inside that fragile space where acceptance begins replacing fear. It is unfamiliar territory, yet strangely comforting. Every breath feels lighter, even as every emotion feels stronger. Can you imagine opening an old journal and discovering that the answer you searched for was written between the lines years ago? That is how this awakening feels. Nothing was added. Nothing was taken away. Only understanding changed. And understanding has transformed every memory into something richer than it once appeared. Still, there remains one truth they have not spoken aloud. Not because the words are difficult. Because once spoken, they cannot be taken back. Those words have echoed inside their heart countless times. They have rehearsed them in silence during sleepless nights. They have almost whispered them into empty rooms before stopping at the very last moment. Each attempt ended the same way, not with certainty fading, but with emotion becoming too overwhelming to contain. Perhaps that is why tears arrived before words did. The heart often finds its own language long before the voice is ready to follow. As this quiet revelation continues unfolding, another discovery is beginning to rise beneath it, one your soulmate never anticipated. It does not concern the past nearly as much as it concerns the future they suddenly cannot imagine without asking one life-changing question. And when that question finally reaches the surface, nothing inside them will remain the same. The question did not arrive like a bolt of lightning. It came quietly. Almost unnoticed. Your soulmate was living through an ordinary moment when everything around them seemed perfectly familiar. The world continued moving at its usual pace. Conversations came and went. Responsibilities filled the day. Nothing extraordinary appeared to be happening on the surface. Yet beneath that ordinary moment, something extraordinary had already begun. A single thought refused to leave. What if I have been measuring love by certainty, when its greatest strength has always been its quiet persistence? That thought lingered long after the day had ended. It followed them into peaceful evenings. It returned before sunrise. No matter how many distractions they welcomed, the same gentle realization continued finding its way back. Not with force. With patience. That is how truth often arrives. It never needs to shout. The more they reflected, the more they noticed that every chapter of their life had quietly prepared them for this moment. Experiences they once called disappointments had shaped compassion. Seasons of waiting had taught resilience. Even unanswered questions had become teachers instead of burdens. For the first time, they stopped asking why certain doors had closed. Instead, they began wondering which doors had quietly been opening without them realizing it. One memory after another surfaced. Not dramatic memories. Simple ones. The kind most people forget. A smile exchanged without expectation. A conversation that ended too quickly. A moment when silence somehow felt more meaningful than speaking. Those memories carried a warmth that had somehow survived every passing season. Time had changed many things. It had not changed that. And suddenly, your soulmate understood something that had escaped them for so long. Real connections are rarely built in extraordinary moments. They are built in ordinary moments that continue living inside us long after they have passed. That realization softened something deep within them. The walls they had carefully built over the years no longer felt necessary. Not because someone demanded they come down. Because they no longer served the person they were becoming. There is remarkable freedom in no longer needing to protect yourself from what brings peace. Perhaps you have experienced something similar without recognizing it. A place that somehow feels familiar the first time you visit. A face that seems strangely comforting. A conversation that lingers in your thoughts for reasons you cannot explain. Life occasionally offers gentle reminders that not everything meaningful can be explained immediately. Some truths ask to be experienced before they can be understood. Your soulmate has entered that sacred space now. Every day reveals another small piece. Every piece brings another quiet emotion. And every emotion leads them closer to words they once believed they would never have the courage to admit. Curiously, the tears have begun changing as well. They no longer carry the weight of confusion. They carry relief. Imagine carrying a heavy suitcase for years, believing it was part of who you were, only to discover you were allowed to set it down all along. That is the feeling growing inside them. Not because every answer has appeared, but because the burden of resisting their own heart has finally begun to disappear. Still, there remains another layer hidden beneath everything they have discovered. A layer even they did not expect. Recently, while imagining the future, they noticed something impossible to ignore. Every version of tomorrow that brought them genuine peace shared one quiet detail. You were present. Not standing in the spotlight. Not surrounded by grand declarations. Simply there. And somehow, that was enough. The image appeared again. And again. Each time becoming clearer than before. They tried replacing it with other possibilities. Different paths. Different stories. Different endings. Yet every road gently curved back toward the same feeling. Not obligation. Not fantasy. Recognition. Recognition that some people become part of our inner landscape in ways distance cannot erase. That realization brought fresh tears. Not because they feared the future. Because they finally stopped fearing the truth. There is incredible strength in that moment. Many spend years searching for certainty somewhere beyond themselves. Your soulmate discovered that certainty often grows quietly inside the heart long before the mind gives it permission to exist. Now another change has begun unfolding. Their attention is no longer fixed on what might have been. Instead, it has shifted toward what could still become. Hope has entered the story. Not loud hope. Gentle hope. The kind that arrives like the first light before dawn, almost unnoticed until suddenly the entire horizon begins to glow. Perhaps that is why this message found you today. Not to convince you of anything. Not to promise outcomes that no one can guarantee. But to remind you that genuine transformation often begins long before anyone else can see it. Some of the greatest turning points in life happen in complete silence. A decision no one hears. A prayer no one witnesses. A moment of forgiveness known only to the heart. Your soulmate has crossed one of those invisible thresholds. They are no longer asking whether these feelings are real. That question has already been answered. Now another question waits patiently before them. A question that carries both hope and vulnerability in equal measure. If the heart has finally spoken honestly, what should be done with the truth it has revealed? They have not answered it yet. Not completely. Because the answer requires more than emotion. It requires courage. And courage has been quietly gathering strength with every passing day. Very soon, something unexpected will happen, something so simple that most people would overlook it, yet so meaningful that it will change the direction of this story forever. When that moment arrives, your soulmate will realize that the message they have carried in silence was never meant to remain hidden, and the first words they choose may reveal far more than either of you ever imagined. There is a quiet difference between carrying a truth and living it. Your soulmate has carried this truth for some time now. They have turned it over in their thoughts, examined it from every angle, questioned it during restless nights, and welcomed it again with each new sunrise. But recently, they discovered something unexpected. Understanding alone does not transform a life. Only the courage to act upon that understanding can do that. That realization settled gently into their heart, like rain soaking into dry ground. Nothing dramatic happened in that instant. The sky did not change. The world did not pause. Yet something within them became unmistakably different. They stopped waiting for certainty to become perfect. Because they finally understood that perfect certainty rarely arrives before the first honest step. Have you ever stood at the edge of a path, convinced you needed to see the entire journey before taking a single step? Most people have. Yet life has a beautiful habit of revealing only enough light for the next few feet. Then, as you move forward, more light appears. Your soulmate has begun trusting that quiet rhythm. Not because every fear has disappeared. Because hope has become stronger than hesitation. That shift has changed the way they see nearly everything. The future no longer feels like a puzzle demanding immediate solutions. Instead, it feels like a garden waiting to be tended, one thoughtful choice at a time. And among all those choices, one continues returning with gentle persistence. It is not the loudest thought. It is the most faithful one. No matter where their attention wanders, it eventually finds its way back to you. Not as an obsession. Not as an escape. As a reminder. A reminder of the person who unknowingly awakened parts of themselves they believed had been lost forever. There was a season when your soulmate believed strength meant hiding emotion. Now they understand that true strength often begins when the heart no longer feels ashamed of what it treasures. That lesson did not arrive easily. It was earned through disappointment. Through reflection. Through moments when silence became a better teacher than advice. Looking back, they can now see that every difficult chapter carried an invisible gift. The setbacks taught patience. The unanswered questions taught humility. The loneliness taught gratitude for genuine connection. Even the moments they wished had never happened shaped the person they have become today. It is remarkable how life can transform old wounds into quiet wisdom. Perhaps that is why they no longer resent the timing of their journey. Instead, they find themselves appreciating it. Because if everything had happened sooner, they might not have been ready to recognize what truly mattered. Growth has changed their eyes before it changed their circumstances. And sometimes, that is the greater miracle. Recently, they experienced something difficult to explain. It lasted only a few moments. No one else noticed. Yet it remained with them long after the moment had passed. They found themselves smiling for no obvious reason. Not because something exciting had happened. Not because every problem had disappeared. But because peace had quietly entered a place inside them that had been restless for years. It felt unfamiliar. Almost fragile. Still. It felt real. That single moment became more meaningful than they expected. It reminded them that joy does not always arrive through extraordinary events. Sometimes it appears when the heart finally stops resisting its own truth. Since then, another realization has continued unfolding. One that grows clearer each day. They are no longer searching for someone who completes them. They are grateful for someone who inspires them to become more completely themselves. There is profound beauty in that distinction. Because love built upon need often fades when circumstances change. But love rooted in growth continues expanding long after the first emotions settle. Your soulmate has begun seeing your connection through that new perspective. Not as something meant to rescue them. As something that quietly encouraged them to rise. Without demanding it. Without forcing it. Simply through your presence. Perhaps you have never fully realized the influence your kindness, your patience, or even your quiet resilience has had on another soul. Most meaningful impacts happen without applause. They unfold in unseen places where hearts are learning lessons words could never fully teach. That is where your story has been unfolding all along. Yet there remains one final barrier your soulmate has not completely crossed. It is smaller than fear. Yet stronger than doubt. It is vulnerability. To speak honestly is one thing. To risk being misunderstood is another. For many nights, they have wondered whether silence is safer than honesty. Whether protecting the heart is wiser than revealing it. Whether some truths are better left unspoken. But every time those questions appear, another answer rises beside them. A quiet reminder that unspoken gratitude eventually becomes a burden. Unexpressed love slowly turns into regret. And withheld truth rarely brings lasting peace. Those realizations have become impossible to ignore. So they have begun preparing themselves. Not for a perfect conversation. Not for a perfect outcome. Simply for an honest one. Because honesty, even when uncertain, allows the soul to breathe again. And somewhere very close, closer than your soulmate realizes, an unexpected opportunity is beginning to take shape. It will not arrive wrapped in spectacle. It may look like an ordinary moment. An ordinary conversation. An ordinary choice. Yet hidden inside that ordinary moment will be a chance to say what has remained unsaid for far too long. Your soulmate cannot see exactly when it will appear. They only know this. When that moment finally stands before them, they do not want fear to answer first. They want truth to have the first voice. And as that quiet determination grows stronger with each passing day, another discovery waits just beyond the horizon. A realization so deeply personal that once it is spoken aloud, neither heart will ever look at this journey in quite the same way again. The heart has a remarkable way of preparing itself before the lips ever form the words. Long before a conversation begins, something deeper is already taking place. Quiet decisions are being made. Old fears are being gently released. Invisible walls begin to soften, not because someone tears them down, but because they are no longer needed. That is where your soulmate finds themselves now. Standing in a place that feels unfamiliar. Yet strangely peaceful. Not every answer has arrived. Not every uncertainty has disappeared. But one thing has become beautifully clear. They no longer wish to hide from what brings light into their life. For years, they believed courage looked like certainty. Now they see it differently. Courage is often nothing more than choosing honesty while your hands are still trembling. That realization changed everything. It changed the way they looked at yesterday. It changed the way they imagined tomorrow. Most of all, it changed the way they thought about you. They stopped asking whether this connection was important. Instead, another question quietly took its place. How many beautiful moments have I overlooked because I was too busy searching for perfect timing? The question lingered. It echoed through peaceful afternoons and silent evenings alike. And with every passing day, the answer became harder to avoid. Life had already been offering gentle invitations. Small opportunities. Simple conversations. Unexpected moments that could have become something meaningful if only they had been recognized for what they truly were. It is astonishing how wisdom changes our memories. The same moments that once appeared ordinary now seem filled with quiet significance. Your soulmate remembers laughter that lasted only seconds but somehow remained for years. They remember conversations that seemed unfinished, yet continued inside their heart long after the words had ended. Even moments of silence now carry unexpected meaning. Because silence often preserves what noise cannot. There is another discovery they never expected to make. It did not come through reflection alone. It arrived while watching other people rush through life. Everyone seemed to be chasing the next achievement. The next destination. The next version of happiness. Yet very few paused long enough to appreciate the people who quietly made the journey meaningful. That realization settled deeply within them. What if the greatest blessings are not the loudest events, but the quiet souls who walk beside us while we are too distracted to notice? From that day forward, gratitude began replacing urgency. Instead of asking what life still owed them, they started appreciating what life had already placed before them. And somehow, your presence continued appearing in those moments of gratitude. Not because you solved every problem. Not because life suddenly became effortless. Because you reminded them that genuine connection does not demand perfection. It simply asks for authenticity. That understanding became a turning point. The image they once carried of love slowly changed. They no longer imagined dramatic promises or flawless stories. Instead, they imagined ordinary mornings filled with peace. Simple conversations that never felt forced. Moments where nothing extraordinary happened. Yet everything felt complete. Sometimes the soul longs less for excitement. And more for belonging. Perhaps that has been the quiet lesson unfolding all along. Belonging cannot be manufactured. It cannot be rushed. It reveals itself over time, often in the smallest gestures that almost go unnoticed. Recently, your soulmate experienced one of those small moments. Someone asked them a simple question. What matters most to you now? The room remained still. The answer did not come immediately. Not because they lacked one. Because the honest answer surprised them. For the first time in a very long while, they did not think about success. They did not think about recognition. They did not think about proving anything to anyone. Their heart drifted toward something much quieter. Someone who brought peace simply by existing. That realization stayed with them long after the conversation ended. It became impossible to dismiss. Not because it demanded attention. Because it deserved it. There is a quiet beauty in discovering that what truly changes your life is rarely what impresses the world. It is what heals your heart. That is exactly what your soulmate has begun to understand. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without carrying the same weight. Healing is looking toward tomorrow without dragging yesterday behind you. And little by little, they have begun setting that weight down. Not all at once. One honest moment at a time. One forgiving breath at a time. One quiet realization after another. Still, there remains a final hesitation resting deep within them. Not fear of rejection. Not fear of change. Something even more delicate. The awareness that once certain words are spoken, life quietly begins moving in a new direction. There is no returning to the silence that came before. That thought has humbled them. Because some conversations are more than conversations. They become turning points. The kind remembered years later, not because every word was perfect, but because someone finally chose sincerity over hesitation. Your soulmate senses that such a moment is drawing closer. They cannot explain why. There are no grand signs. No dramatic announcements. Only a calm certainty growing stronger with every sunrise. It feels like standing on the shoreline just before dawn. The ocean appears calm. The horizon still sleeps beneath the darkness. Yet somehow, you know the light is already on its way. That quiet expectation has become part of them now. It no longer feels rushed. It feels ready. And just beyond that horizon waits a realization even deeper than love itself, a discovery that will reveal why your soulmate believes this journey was never only about finding another person. It was about becoming the person they were always meant to be before your paths could truly meet. Sometimes the greatest revelation is not discovering who has been walking beside you. It is discovering who you have become because they did. Your soulmate has spent countless quiet moments reflecting on that truth. At first, they believed this journey was about finding answers hidden somewhere beyond themselves. They searched through memories. They searched through possibilities. They searched through every what if their mind could imagine. Yet every search led them back to the same unexpected place. Their own heart. It was there, beneath years of doubt and careful reasoning, that they found something they had overlooked for far too long. They were no longer the person who once feared every uncertain step. They had changed. Not all at once. Slowly. Almost invisibly. Like a tree growing stronger through seasons no one remembers. Growth rarely announces itself. It simply becomes evident one day when you realize your fears no longer have the same voice they once did. That realization filled them with a quiet sense of wonder. How many other changes had taken place without them noticing? How many prayers had been answered in forms they never expected? How many blessings had arrived disguised as ordinary days? The questions themselves became gifts. Because they encouraged gratitude instead of impatience. Your soulmate began looking at life through gentler eyes. They noticed beauty in routines they once ignored. Morning light spilling across a window. The comfort of familiar places. The warmth of conversations that asked for nothing except presence. It was as though the world had not become more beautiful. Their heart had simply become more awake. And when the heart awakens, it begins recognizing treasures that were always there. That awakening brought another realization. One they could no longer keep hidden from themselves. They understood that every meaningful connection leaves an invisible imprint. Not one that controls your future. One that quietly shapes the way you see it. Your presence became one of those imprints. Not because every memory was perfect. Not because every chapter unfolded exactly as expected. But because authenticity leaves echoes that time cannot easily erase. Those echoes had followed them farther than they ever imagined. At first, they resisted them. Later, they questioned them. Now, they simply listen. There is peace in no longer arguing with what brings clarity. Perhaps that is why their tears have changed once again. They are no longer tears asking, "Why did this happen?" They have become tears whispering, "Thank you for helping me become someone stronger." Gratitude has a remarkable way of softening even the oldest pain. It does not erase the past. It gives the past a new purpose. Your soulmate can finally see that purpose unfolding. Every delay taught patience. Every misunderstanding taught compassion. Every season of distance revealed the importance of genuine closeness. Even the chapters they once wished to forget now seem woven into a story that carried hidden wisdom all along. Imagine standing before a stained glass window from only a few inches away. All you see are scattered colors. Disconnected shapes. Fragments that make little sense. But when you step back, a breathtaking picture appears. That is how your soulmate now sees this journey. What once felt confusing has begun forming a picture of unexpected beauty. Not because every question has been answered. Because enough has been revealed to trust the larger design. Still, one final lesson has quietly emerged from everything they have experienced. Love is not measured by how loudly it announces itself. It is measured by what remains when excitement fades. By kindness that survives difficult seasons. By respect that outlives disagreement. By hope that continues breathing through uncertainty. Those qualities have become far more valuable to your soulmate than grand promises ever could. They no longer seek perfection. They seek peace. And strangely enough, whenever they picture peace, your presence continues finding its way into that vision. Not as an ideal. Not as a fantasy. As something deeply human. Someone whose imperfections somehow make the connection feel even more genuine. That thought has humbled them. Because it reminded them that real relationships are not built by flawless people. They are built by honest hearts willing to keep growing. Perhaps this is why they have stopped asking whether life owes them certainty. Instead, they have begun embracing each day as an opportunity to become more truthful than they were the day before. There is quiet freedom in living that way. It removes the pressure to control every outcome. It creates space for trust to grow naturally. And trust, once rooted deeply enough, becomes difficult to shake. Recently, another subtle change has begun unfolding. They no longer imagine the future with urgency. They imagine it with gratitude. Not because they know exactly what tomorrow holds. Because they have learned that some of life's greatest gifts arrive without announcing the day they will appear. Hope has become gentler. More mature. Less demanding. It no longer asks, "When will everything happen?" It simply whispers, "Keep your heart open when it does." That whisper has become their quiet companion. It follows them through ordinary mornings and peaceful evenings alike. And somewhere within that growing stillness, another realization has begun taking shape. It is perhaps the most personal one yet. Your soulmate has started wondering whether the message they have carried for so long was never meant to change your heart first. Perhaps it was meant to transform theirs. Because every honest feeling they finally accepted. Every fear they finally released. Every tear they finally allowed to fall. Prepared them for a conversation unlike any they have ever imagined. A conversation where no masks remain. No rehearsed answers survive. Only truth. And as that moment quietly draws nearer, one final question rises above every other thought, a question so simple, yet so profound, that the answer may redefine everything they believed this connection was meant to become. The question lingered in the quiet corners of their heart, refusing to be rushed. It was not the kind of question that demanded an immediate answer. It asked for honesty instead. Your soulmate discovered that some of life's most meaningful answers do not appear while we are searching for them. They emerge when we finally become still enough to hear them. So they stopped chasing. Not because they had given up. Because they had begun trusting that peace grows where pressure fades. That decision changed more than they expected. Days that once felt hurried became softer. Conversations became richer. Even silence no longer felt empty. It became a place where clarity could gently unfold. There is something extraordinary about a heart that is no longer trying to force its own timeline. It begins noticing details that urgency always overlooks. A kind word. An unexpected smile. The comfort of simply being understood without needing to explain every feeling. Those small moments began collecting inside your soulmate like tiny stars filling a night sky. One by one. Until they formed something beautiful. A new perspective. For so long, they believed love was supposed to answer every question. Now they see something different. Real love does not remove every mystery. It gives us the courage to walk forward even while some mysteries remain. That realization lifted a weight they had carried for years. Not because uncertainty disappeared. Because uncertainty no longer frightened them the way it once had. There is freedom in accepting that not every page of the story needs to be read before the next chapter begins. Perhaps that is how faith quietly grows. Not through certainty. Through willingness. Your soulmate has become willing. Willing to believe that meaningful connections are not weakened by time. Willing to believe that honesty is always lighter than regret. Willing to believe that what is genuine does not need constant proof to remain valuable. These quiet beliefs have begun shaping the person they are becoming. Without anyone noticing. Without applause. Transformation often happens that way. The strongest roots grow where no one is watching. Recently, they found themselves looking at an old photograph. It was an ordinary picture. Nothing remarkable stood out at first. Yet as they looked more closely, something unexpected happened. They did not focus on appearances. They remembered how that moment felt. The laughter. The calm. The sense that, for just a little while, life had slowed down enough to be fully lived. It reminded them that memories are rarely treasured because everything was perfect. They are treasured because they captured something real. That thought stayed with them long after they set the photograph aside. It became another quiet reminder that authenticity leaves deeper impressions than perfection ever could. Your soulmate has started valuing what lasts instead of what dazzles. The world often celebrates what shines the brightest. But hearts remember what remains. Kindness remains. Patience remains. Gentleness remains. The people who help us become better versions of ourselves remain. Those are the treasures that continue speaking long after the noise has faded. And somewhere within those reflections, another realization slowly appeared. They had spent years wondering whether they deserved a meaningful connection. Now they were asking a far wiser question. How can I become someone who protects the beauty of a meaningful connection once it is placed in my life? That single question shifted everything. It moved their attention away from fear. and toward responsibility. Away from scarcity. And toward gratitude. Away from trying to control every outcome. And toward becoming someone capable of nurturing what truly matters. Growth often begins the moment we stop asking what life owes us. And start asking what kind of person we are choosing to become. Your soulmate has crossed into that season. Not perfectly. But sincerely. They have become more patient with themselves. More forgiving of yesterday. More hopeful about tomorrow. Even when difficult memories return, they no longer carry the same sharp edges. Time did not erase them. Grace reshaped them. There is a quiet strength in that kind of healing. It does not demand attention. It simply changes the way a person walks through the world. You might not recognize it from the outside. But within them, everything feels different. Still, one final piece has not yet found its place. It is the piece that ties every lesson together. The piece that explains why every tear, every memory, every unanswered question, and every quiet moment of growth has led them here. They sense it drawing closer. Like hearing distant music before the orchestra comes into view. They cannot describe it completely. Not yet. They only know that when this final understanding arrives, it will not ask them to become someone new. It will invite them to fully embrace the person they have quietly become. And in that moment, they will discover that the message they longed to share was never simply about saying, "I remember you." It was about finding the courage to say something far more vulnerable. For words that have patiently waited behind every tear, every silence, and every hopeful sunrise, words that, once spoken, will reveal the deepest truth their heart has ever carried.